So, today in the lesson of microbiology, let's read about a special topic. Well, this topic is special because this is seen to be the most common hospital acquired infections, and it is also important because it's also the second most important community acquired infections. And yes, I'm talking about UTI, that is the urinary tract infections. Well, there is a diagram here which shows like UTI is homologous to females. This will remind us of the fact that UTI is something which is related to females. Now, talking about what is urinary tract infections. So basically, understand that there are these normal commensals which are present at the meatus. Okay, they are present at the urinary meatus or the urethral meatus. Now, what happens is these things generally colonize there only; they do not spread. But what happens is, due to some injury or conditions, they go up, they ascend up, and they infect the bladder or infect till the ureter. And this process is something which is called as urinary tract infections. Now, you could have a lot of organisms which will cause it, mainly being the gram-negative bacteria, and you also have E. coli, you have Enterobacteriaceae, you have Leptospira, and other substances. We'll talk about that. Now, talking about the classification, they are of two types. One is something which is lower UTI or upper UTI. Here in the diagram, you can see something which is above the bladder will be called as upper UTI, whereas something which is below the bladder will be called as lower UTI. Then, after talking about that, there is a special type of UTI called as catheter associated UTI. COTI is the most common type of healthcare associated infection, where there is, it's because of the indwelling urinary catheter, and that's the most important risk factor. Now, let's talk about what is the difference between lower UTI and upper UTI. Well, the lower UTI, the things are involved are urethra and the bladder, whereas upper UTI it's mainly the kidney and the ureter. And the symptoms of the lower UTI would be dysuria, urgency, and frequency, whereas upper UTI would be more of like abdominal pain, fever, and local manifestations such as they'll also have perinephric abscess and conditions which will be explained later. Then you have route of spread. Lower UTI is mainly by ascending from the urinary meatus, it goes upwards, whereas upper UTI it's mainly by the descending route. It could also be by ascending route, like it goes to the bladder and then there is not strong there is this strong vesicourethral reflex, and bacteria is like I'll go climb upwards and then it will go to the ureter, then it will go to the pelvis, and then it will go to the kidney. It might happen that way. That will be the ascending route. If not for that, there is also a descending route which happens by the blood or conditions like that. And talking about lower UTI, it's the thing which is seen more commonly. As I told you, it's because of the catheter process. Then you have the upper UTI. Well, it's less common and it's more serious actually. Talking about the epidemiology, as I told you, it's seen, it's the most common hospital acquired infection, and in the community it's the second most important infection after the respiratory aspect. Then the predisposing factors, as I told you, the gender is the first important thing. As I told you, females, UTI, you write it like a O with a plus in bottom of it, looks like a UTI. So females are the ones who are associated with. There is a specific reason for that. First being the fact that they have a short urethra, and second being the fact that they have there is a close proximity of their urethral meatus to their anus. So that is the two main reasons, and that is also because of the anatomical structure. Here in the diagram I have rightly indicated that. And 50% of the women generally report one episode of UTI at least one point in their life. Talking about the age, I've drawn this schematic diagrams where I talk about, in the first year of life, both male and female have the same prevalence of around 2%, whereas when you're talking about in males, it decreases after that, and after there is a increased age, or when they're in the old age, there is prostate enlargement, and once there is prostate enlargement, that will interfere with the emptying of the bladder, and that will again cause infection. Anywhere there is stasis, always you can consider there can be an infection. That's a general rule of thumb. What is that? Whenever there is stasis, there will be infection happening. Then you have this female thing. The female thing is quite interesting. It looks like a step process, stepwise process, which is increasing. So till the first year of age, they are also around 2%. But after that, from their age of 5 to 17 years, the percentage is about 3%, which is mentioned there. And then after that, when their adult life, somewhere around 18, 19, 20, they're having a percentage risk of 10 to 20%. And then at the end of it, somewhere around 20 to 40 years, where they're actively mating and they're making children out there, well, there it is about almost 50%. Now let's talk about the pregnancy. Pregnancy is also an important, predisposing factor. The thing with pregnancy is that, it's very important to understand that what is asymptomatic bacteriuria and the ones who are having symptomatic conditions. Because of the anatomical and the hormonal changes in pregnancy, there is more favor for UTI, and most females develop asymptomatic bacteriuria during pregnancy. And in some cases, it can lead to serious infections of both mother and the fetus. That is going to be a problem. Now, talking about the structure and functional abnormality, there could be structural obstruction when there is obstruction such as prostate enlargement or urethric stones or ureteric stones or tumors. Because of obstruction, there is stasis, and stasis will always increase the process of infections. Then you have functional obstruction. Let's say you have a spinal cord injury. Again, the bladder is not working because of the regional ganglia. We have to know about the separate kind of ganglia which supplies the kidney. If that ganglia is not functional now because of the sacral plexus, what ultimately happens is that the bladder is not able to contract, because the bladder is both voluntary and involuntary. So because of this nerve issues like sclerosis or that of spinal cord injury, there will be again difference in the functionality. Then let's talk about the bacterial virulence factors. I'll explain this in detail in pathogenesis, where the adhesion to the uroepithelium is going to cause a lot of damage. Then you have vesico-urethral reflex. The game is very simple. So basically there is a ball valve mechanism. Okay, so when this ball valve mechanism is kind of weakened, what happens is that there is reflex of the urine from the bladder back into the ureter, because of which again infection can easily happen. So that's a false mechanism. Then you have the genetic factors. Well, the people who are having genetic predisposition are going to have a lot of infections. Talking about etiology, well, this is very important. It's important that we remember all the etiologies and the organisms. I try to simplify it down. So most of the UTI is mainly caused by E. coli. Remember, blankly somebody comes up to you with UTI, always remember two facts. One is female, the other one is E. coli. Then you have other gram-negative bacteria such as Klebsiella, Protease, and substance and organisms such as that. Then you have these fungus. You have Candida. You have Candida albicans as a fungus, which is very important. Then you have other species. Who are the other species? Well, they are special. That is Staph aureus, Pseudomonas, Acetinobacter. These are non-fermenters. And you're talking about gram-positive cocci. In this, you have Enterococcus species, Staphylococcus species such as Aureus, Epidermis, or Staph saprophyticus. You can remember it as the mnemonic of Say, which is a very crude mnemonic. Then we'll talk about parasites. In parasites, you have to remember STD. STD is Schistosomia hematobium, T for Trichomonas vaginalis, and D for dicotophornale. I'm sorry with the pronunciation. It's dioctophyrinale, right? Then you have viruses. So viruses, you have ABK virus. In that you have you also have adenovirus 11 and 12. Rather from the fact of remembering it, just remember fungus as a box of Candida albicans, and parasites, remember it as STD, and gram-positive, remember the Staph species. And for etiology of the gram-negative ones, you remember E. coli and the normal commensals. Then let's talk about the important facts of pathogenesis. But before getting into the pathogenesis, let's think, have we missed out something? Well, we haven't anything. So pathogenesis, the thing is, there could be two routes, mainly the ascending route or the descending route. Well, I've made a funny diagram for this. Things are climbing up or things are climbing down. Ascending route, it's mainly because of the sex. People are having sex, and that could be a reason why there is ascending route, and there is instrumentation such as catheterization during a renal procedure, or just to empty out the bladder. You do catheterization when people are under conditions of coma or something like that. Then again, that will cause pathogenesis through catheterization. Then you have descending route. For descending route, it could be a hematogenous seeding. And so this is something which happens very less, that is almost 5%, as I've mentioned in the diagram. To remember and this will be hematogenous seeding will be because of bacteremia. There is bacteria in the blood. And to remember the organisms for this, I wanted to remember Sala, my staff left ho gaya. Okay, as in Hindi you say Sala, my staff left ho gaya. You're cribbing that your staff left off. So Sala is your Salmonella, my is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, staff is Staphylococcus, and left is Leptospira. And that's going to help you remember all the descending route infection causing organisms. Then let's talk about the colonization of it. The colonization of it is going to be the first part of the pathogenesis. So what is essential in this process of pathogenesis through colonization is that, so there is this urethral epithelium, right, which is urothelium, and so there is adhesion by the means of P. fimbriae and mannose resistant fimbriae, by which the bacteria adheres to the epithelium and climbs up. That's all you have to remember. And secondly, you have to remember the cystitis which is going to happen. Well, the pathogenesis ascends upwards to the bladder and causes cystitis, inflammation basically. This is inflammation of the bladder, and it is also mediated by bacterial toxin. Okay, this may facilitate again ascension. Now, how does this toxin help in ascension? Is because it inhibits peristalsis, and that causes urinary stasis. And I've told you the general rule of thumb is that whenever there is urinary stasis, it will cause infection. And thirdly, you have the further ascension. So further ascension is mainly because of the vesicourethral reflex. So the fluid which is collected in the bladder will go into the ureters because there is vesicourethral reflex, and this will lead to pyelonephritis, and this will cause the renal infection of parenchyma, and this will ultimately lead to acute inflammatory conditions and basically cause acute tubular injury. When you're talking about descending route, as I told you, you have to just remember the organisms. That's all you have to know. You have to know the hematogenous seeding and the bacteremia. Then talking about host defense mechanism plays a very important factor to this. First being the fact that the factors which are related to urine, as I told you all about the acidic nature of the urine, then the osmolality of it, then the inhibition to bacterial adhesion, and there is frequent urination or mechanical flushing of urine, or there is uroepithelium. Mucosal immunity is always IgA, so you have to remember the IgA part of it. And then you have these Tam-Horsfall proteins. Those are going to help in those are going to be another mucosal immunity factors. Then you have talking about the clinical manifestations. Importantly, lower UTI, as I've already told you, is going to be asymptomatic bacteria can happen, or there can be cystitis, there could be urethritis, and there could be acute urethral syndrome. Cystitis being the inflammation of the bladder, urethritis is the inflammation of the urethra. Then the upper UTI is, again, importantly, you will have three diagrams which I've drawn here. Is the kidney TB can happen, or there could be perinephric abscess, and there could be renal tuberculosis, and there could be urethritis. Now, talking about lower UTI specifically, what you have to talk about is that asymptomatic bacteriuria can happen. Well, that's what. It's important for us to understand that this can happen in asymptomatic conditions, or it could become more symptomatic. In asymptomatic conditions, what you do is you see the quantitative count of the bacteria, and you look into what is the age or condition such as that. Another thing about asymptomatic condition is that, remember, it's more important for the people or the women of the older ages, not of the younger ages. And the clinical significance is the fact that it's important in pregnant women and people who are going to undergo prostate surgery or urologic procedures. And in contrast, asymptomatic UTI is not important in non-pregnant women or premenopausal women. It's not important. That's important. That's what you have to remember. And in cystitis, you have to remember only two things. That is clouding and hematuria. Clouding and hematuria. Then acute urethral syndrome is basically, it's seen in young sexually active females, and there is a presence of classical symptoms of lower UTI. and pyuria is present. So that kind of ends us with our UTI.